The bathroom had always been my little sanctuary, a quiet retreat where I could step away from the noise and demands of everyday life. The hot water poured down in a steady, comforting stream, gently easing the stiffness from my shoulders and filling the room with soft clouds of steam. The air carried the gentle fragrance of my favorite lavender body wash, wrapping around me like a warm hug. I tilted my head back, letting the water rinse over my face, my thoughts wandering to the usual list of things waiting for me once I dried off. Dinner to plan, emails to answer, the quiet rhythm of family life. I didn't hear the soft creak of the door opening. The sound of the shower drowned it out completely. I also didn't notice the slight change in the air when Daniel, my stepson, quietly stepped inside. He was supposed to be out with his friends that afternoon, so I assumed the house was empty. But there he was, standing just inside the doorway, clearly surprised to see the shower running. Through the frosted glass, my silhouette was visible, and I remained completely unaware at first, softly humming to myself while I washed my arms. It was only when I turned to rinse the soap away that I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. My heart gave a sudden jump. There he stood, frozen in place, looking embarrassed and unsure. For a few long seconds, we simply stared at each other through the misty glass, the steam swirling around us and making everything feel strangely dreamlike. The air felt thick with awkwardness. I could see the surprise and discomfort written across his face, his cheeks turning pink as he realized he had walked in at the wrong moment. My first reaction was to tell him to leave right away, but something held me back. Maybe it was the genuine shock in his eyes, or perhaps it was the realization that this kind of small family mishap can happen in any household. Whatever the reason, I stayed quiet for a moment, letting the tension settle. Finally, he broke the silence. "Sorry," he mumbled, his voice barely rising above the sound of the water. He quickly turned and left, closing the door gently behind him. I stood there under the spray for what felt like a long time afterward, my mind spinning. The warm water continued to fall, but my thoughts were far from calm. Shock mixed with embarrassment. And underneath it all was a quiet concern about how this might affect our already delicate stepmother-stepson relationship. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just an innocent mistake that any teenager might make when rushing through the house. But deep down, I knew the moment had created a small crack in the everyday comfort we had built. After turning off the water, I wrapped myself in a soft towel and wiped the fog from the mirror. My reflection looked back at me with flushed cheeks and wide eyes. I took a slow, deep breath and tried to push the awkwardness aside. As I walked back to my room, though, I couldn't shake the feeling that something between us had shifted, even if only slightly. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in the towel, replaying the scene in my mind, not with any strange feelings, but with a genuine worry about how to move forward without making things uncomfortable at home. In the days that followed, the memory of that bathroom encounter stayed with me like a quiet shadow. Daniel started avoiding eye contact whenever we passed each other in the hallway or sat at the dinner table. His cheeks would flush slightly, and he kept his answers short and polite. I noticed the change immediately and felt a pang of sadness. Our home had always been peaceful, but now a gentle tension lingered in the air, the kind that comes from an innocent misunderstanding that neither person knows how to address. At first, I tried to act completely normal. I kept up with my usual routines, making breakfast, asking about his day, offering help with homework. But the more I tried to ignore the awkwardness, the more aware of it I became. It started to feel like a small wall had gone up between us, and I didn't want that. So, very gradually and carefully, I began creating small, everyday opportunities for us to interact in light, positive ways. One sunny morning in the kitchen, sunlight streamed through the windows as I prepared coffee. Daniel sat at the table scrolling on his phone. When I needed a mug from the cabinet above him, I reached over gently, my arm brushing his shoulder by accident. "Oops, sorry about that," I said with a warm, light laugh. I noticed him tense for a second, but I kept my tone casual and friendly. "Need anything while I'm up here, sweetheart?" He mumbled something and smiled shyly, his shoulders relaxing a little. It was a tiny moment, but it felt like the first small step toward easing the discomfort. As the week went on, these little interactions grew more natural. We stood side by side at the sink washing dishes one afternoon, and I asked him about school, about his friends, about the things that mattered to him. I leaned in slightly to hear his answers better, keeping the conversation warm and open. "You've been awfully quiet lately," I said gently. "Is everything okay?" He didn't open up fully right away, but I could see his jaw soften and his grip on the plate loosen. The space between us started to feel less heavy. Another evening, while cleaning up after dinner, I caught him glancing my way as I bent down to pick up a dropped spoon. Instead of looking away quickly, I met his eyes with a kind smile and said, "You know, if something's on your mind, you can always talk to me. We're family." He blushed again, but didn't run off this time. He nodded and even helped carry the dishes to the sink. These small gestures, casual touches while passing items, playful but innocent remarks, shared chores, began to rebuild the easy connection we used to have. One morning, I decided to test the waters a little more. I was making breakfast in a comfortable sweater, moving around the kitchen. When I reached for something in the fridge and my hand accidentally brushed his, I smiled and said softly, "Next time you need something from the bathroom, maybe knock first." He turned bright red, then laughed nervously. The laughter felt genuine and relieving. We both chuckled, and for the first time since the incident, the air between us felt lighter. A few days later, after a long day, I headed toward the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, my hair still damp from an earlier quick rinse. I remembered I had left my hairbrush in Daniel's room earlier that day, so I knocked lightly and stepped inside. He was sitting on his bed, looking at his phone. When he saw me, his eyes widened in surprise at the towel, but he quickly looked down respectfully. "Sorry," I said with an apologetic smile. "I think I left my brush in here." As I searched the dresser, the towel slipped slightly due to the damp fabric. It didn't fall completely, but it loosened enough to make me gasp and grab it quickly. The moment was embarrassing for both of us. Daniel immediately stood up, grabbed the towel, and helped me adjust it with careful, respectful hands, keeping his eyes averted the whole time. "Here," he said quietly, his voice kind. His hands trembled a little from the awkwardness, but his actions were gentle and proper. For a few seconds we stood there, the room filled with that same heavy silence from the bathroom incident. But this time, instead of running away, I took a deep breath and said softly, "Daniel, we should probably talk about what happened the other day. It was just an accident, but I don't want it to make things weird between us." He nodded, looking relieved that I had brought it up. That small conversation opened the door to more honest talks in the following days. Our interactions slowly turned into something deeper and more meaningful. We started having longer conversations, not in the shower, but in the living room, at the kitchen table, or while taking evening walks. We talked about school pressures, his dreams for the future, my own challenges as a stepmom, and how we could support each other better as a family. The steam and water were replaced by open, heartfelt communication that helped wash away the awkwardness and build real understanding. One evening, after another honest chat, I leaned against the kitchen counter and said, "I'm really glad. We're talking more. It means a lot to me." He smiled and replied, "Me too. I didn't want things to stay weird forever." Those moments of connection felt warm and genuine, strengthening the bond between us in a healthy, family-oriented way. But life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges. One evening, while Daniel and I were in the kitchen preparing dinner, together, laughing, chatting, and standing close as we chopped vegetables, my husband walked in earlier than expected. He saw us standing near each other, smiling and talking closely after weeks of visible tension in the house. From his perspective, the scene looked more intimate than it really was, especially given the recent awkwardness he had sensed but not fully understood. The room went completely silent. My husband's face shifted from surprise to confusion to deep concern. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice low but filled with emotion. Daniel and I both froze. I quickly stepped back, my heart racing with the fear of misunderstanding. Daniel looked pale, worried that his father might think something inappropriate had been happening. We sat down in the living room, and the conversation that followed was one of the hardest but most important we had ever had. With tears in my eyes, I explained everything honestly: the bathroom accident, the embarrassment, the avoidance, and how we had worked hard to rebuild trust through open talks and family moments. Daniel added his side, emphasizing how much he respected me and how grateful he was for the improved relationship. My husband listened quietly at first, his expression moving from anger to understanding as the full story came out. It wasn't easy. There were difficult questions, moments of hurt, and plenty of raw emotions. But because we faced it together, with complete honesty, the conversation became a turning point. We talked late into the night about communication, boundaries, trust, and what being a blended family really means. In the end, the incident that started with embarrassment became the catalyst for something much better: a stronger, more open family. Daniel and I developed a healthier, more comfortable stepmother-stepson relationship built on respect and understanding. My marriage grew deeper because we learned to talk about the small things before they became big problems. The house felt warmer and more connected than it had in a long time. Looking back now, I realize how one awkward moment can either push people apart or bring them closer, if everyone chooses honesty and kindness. Our family chose the latter, and I'm truly grateful for that.